All right, so good afternoon, guys. We got an addition this week to the podcast. Brad is part of the podcast anyway, but last week he couldn't attend. So this is Brad Humphrey. We are still missing Brian. Eventually, the fourth seat will be filled up, and we'll have Brian with us, but he is feeling under the weather. We were sitting here talking about possible topics for today, and I think we're going to start with what is something you remember food-wise or drink-wise, something special when you would go to your grandparents as a kid. And the first thing I can think of is my great Mamaw, I would call her. So my Mamaw's mom, we would go over to her house, and she would always have Little Debbie snack cakes, and it would always be an apple flip, something called an apple flip. They don't make them now.
Is that not the ones with the jelly in them?
It'd be like a jelly, almost like a turnover.
They make
but they make the pumpkin
delight one.
The
pumpkin delight.
So it's just like the pumpkin delight, but apple. And she would always have about 7,000 of those in the drawer. No, it'd be like 20. Okay, a package of them in the drawer.
That's funny you say that because my mama always had. When I was little, I can remember her having the oatmeal raisin pies, I would pick all the raisins out because I hated the raisins.
See, mine was the Little Debbie wise. It was the little brownies that had the walnuts on them, and I didn't like
before the cosmic days.
And I didn't like the walnuts, so I would pick all the walnuts off, and I would throw.
That's
those
how
things
it was
away.
about that. They weren't oatmeal raisin; they were just raisin, but they were like you know what I'm talking about, like they were cream filled or whatever.
And it wasn't a very good raisin either. It was like a very dried raisin, if
There's
I remember
no such
correctly.
thing as a good
It was almost
raisin,
like a chocolate chip.
Yes, a good
if they were chocolate chips, it'd be amazing. Like it would be, that would solve the whole thing. Like. No, that
the cinnamon raisin biscuit from Hardee's is a good raisin.
Oh yeah, there's a guy at work that always likes those. But the other thing I always used to like is my other side of the family. There's a guy that used to work for me would make this comment too. Those strawberries that are in a dish, they're a candy. And they're wrapped like strawberries.
Yeah.
They would always have
like juice
those
in them
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, that's
what
old
people candy.
Well, that's church candy. That's church
candy.
Out
Somebody's got it in a purse with lint and everything else wrapped around it.
When I would go to my Mamaw's and I would stay in the summer with her. When I was real little, I remember those raisin pies for whatever reason, and she used to have frozen strawberries all the time, and I would get them out and I would just eat frozen strawberries with Cool Whip.
That sounds amazing. That's like a good summery food too, like.
She would just let me eat all I wanted. Just
go pick them right off the vine.
No, they were right out of the bag, frozen. She froze. That's she canned and she would freeze stuff. And she used to. I remember her also getting like those little ice cream cups from the Swans, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Swan
with
Man
the little
was the
wooden spoon in there.
Talking
about strawberry and
you'd have a Neapolitan type thing.
Yeah.
Mom used to get stuff from Schwan Man all the time, and I remember we used to keep butter pecan ice cream in like it wasn't like a pint or not a pint, but a quart thing like you get at Walmart. She would have a bucket in the freezer that was huge thing, and we'd.
Well, it looked like the size of a bucket you would see at an ice cream store.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like that kind of, and I don't even think it was plastic. I think it was paper.
It was probably cardboard.
Cardboard, yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of your Mamaw, like we have this joke a lot, but your Mamaw, like when I'd go over there to eat, it used to crack me up so much because we'd get over there and she'd be like, "Yeah, boys, I don't have anything to eat, man. Some leftovers or something like that." Next thing you know, it'd be like Thanksgiving dinner. She'd pull out and that's what we'd eat.
That's how it was because I lived with him, for a couple times, and she would, even if we had like soup and a sandwich, it was like the best soup and a sandwich.
But when she pulled the leftovers out of the refrigerator, were they all in like the whipped cream buckets and the country crock butter, like the old school Mamaw buckets?
If I was to get you something out right now, that's what it would be.
Yeah, she never had a legit like piece of Tupperware or anything. What about you, Brad? What kind of foods was you growing up
My
on?
Mamaw had the best fried apple pies.
Oh man.
And like she would try to teach some of my older cousins how to make them, and they were okay, but there was always just something about when your Mamaw cooks something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everybody wants the recipe, and there is no recipe. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they just throw all that stuff in there, and then they fry it, and like I don't know.
I remember my Mamaw drying apples outside on the porch like one summer when I lived with her, she had like sheets out there and it was apples, and I was like, God, I had the birds crapping all over this. Like
maybe that was the secret ingredient in all those fried apple pies.
She also, I remember her doing pickles one time, and she had pickles all in her kitchen, like laying around, and they would smell really bad where they were like fermenting or whatever. Man, the good old days. Yeah,
it's funny, like you say, how Brad's discussing. You know, there's so many things that my mama cooked, and she did it so awesomely, and you try to mimic it now, or you try to do it yourself,
and nobody can hold it.
There is nothing close to it at all.
At all.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I can't make gravy like my mamaw. She would make gravy, and she'd be like, I remember the last time she made gravy for us was Christmas a couple years ago, and she was making it, and she just kept stirring it. She was like, this gravy ain't gonna turn out, you know, it ain't gonna turn out. And of course, in 5 seconds, it just turned into gravy. It went from milk to gravy. I'm like, what kind of trickery is going on here? She was stirring it and stirring it and stirring it. So I mean, they just had a special way about them to, you know.
I think the closest thing that I've ever had of something my mamaw made that was made by somebody else, it was my mamaw made chocolate gravy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I have a cousin who can make really good chocolate gravy, and it's more pudding.
Oh yeah,
more pudding like, but you still put it on a biscuit, and that's probably why we all weigh 300 pounds.
Oh man,
in my family, because we're all.
My mama always. She had some, like, her meatloaf was always my favorite. Like, her fried chicken was always the best. Like, she had some things that she always made that were, you know. But she always made, like, crazy stuff. Like, we'd go over there on Sunday, and if it was meatloaf and salmon patties.
Oh, man.
It was, like, the most random, but it was so good. You know, it was just crazy.
I was talking about salmon patties this weekend with Ashley. We were up at the hospital or whatever, and her mom used to make salmon patties, and like I used to come in, and we don't do them here because it stinks the house up so bad.
They smell terrible.
But there's something about them, especially like my mom. When my mom would make salmon patties, it would be like fried potatoes, salmon patties, macaroni and cheese, or macaroni and tomatoes, and then you'd have biscuits and gravy. And like there was something about dipping the salmon patties in gravy. Oh man.
The combination of biscuits and gravy, fried potatoes, all that, like my mama would always have that. And I think even fried chicken too. And you'd be like, God,
oh yeah, fried chicken and biscuits and gravy goes together. Same way with corn. I mean, and green beans, man, it's so good.
Now, what other snacky foods did you guys like when you were little?
That's a good one.
Yes,
we talked about all you mean
foods.
Snacks?
So I can remember where we live, where my parents live now. There was a lot of older people that lived on our road, and where we lived, it was really close to like the old Piggly Wiggly grocery store.
Oh yeah.
So those old people would be like, "Hey, Brad, can you go to the store and buy some whatever?" So I would go do their grocery shopping for them. They would always give me money. So my go-to at that time was probably a can of Pringles and a Coca-Cola Classic.
Nice.
Like, and that was just, and I was probably 10 or 12 years old doing that stuff. And I can just remember playing some Nintendo 64 with my Coca-Cola Classic and my can of Pringles and thinking that I was like high on the hog.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I've always had a thing, I guess the majority of my life, for either, we talked about this last week, Doritos and jalapeno cheese dip or Doritos and the bean dip that comes in the Dorito can.
You know, I haven't had that bean dip in years, and I still remember what it tastes like. It's like one of those, like, those ones you never forget. You know?
It's terrible, but yet it's amazing kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I liked everything, man. I liked like, you know, there's only a few things I don't like. Cottage cheese. Get it out of here.
Sour cream.
Ban cottage cheese.
Get it out of here.
Take it out. Doge, do your thing on cottage cheese. Take it out of here. But I'm pretty open to a lot of stuff. So, like, it didn't matter. I'll tell you one thing that I used to eat a lot. So if we're going to talk about Mamaw's cooking, we got to talk about Mom's.
Yeah.
Before
we get into this.
No, don't just leave it at that. Because she'll listen to this. Shout out, Mom.
So what kind of cook was Mama Shepherd?
We had a lot of tuna casserole. That's what we always make fun of her about. But, strangely enough, I haven't had tuna casserole since probably 2004, 2003, when she made it last. But I can still remember what it tastes like. And I kind of miss it sometimes. We got a visitor.
bro.
Get in there.
Aiden, stay in there.
Get in there, boy.
My son is getting ready
Trying
to
to
make a
peek
run
in.
through here, but go ahead, Travis.
No, but
When you say tuna casserole, are you meaning like real tuna casserole, or
like
like
tuna
tuna helper
helper
or something like that?
tuna helper. No, oh, well, it was always no. She might have made it like homemade. Like it was tuna, the macaroni shells, and a ton of cheese, and probably cream cheese in it or something that made it soft. But we had that a lot. But she took care of us. Don't get me wrong. She's going to listen to this. Think I'm saying bad things.
I love you, Tina, too.
But I always had a lot of. We always ate a lot of Hot Pockets, and I used to like the barbecue Hot Pocket.
I don't know if I've had a barbecue.
The barbecue Hot Pocket and the ham and cheese one were my favorite.
Ham and cheese is just OG.
It's good.
Yeah.
The barbecue one used to be one of the OG flavors too, but I don't think they make it anymore. But we ate out a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she did cook. You know, she took care of us. We didn't starve. Obviously, see this specimen before you. No, no. Shout out tuna casserole to Mom. So that was one of my favorite things she made. She also made this thing for a while. She got on a kick about this. I can remember when I was probably in like first grade. She made these like stuffed shells that were stuffed with like ricotta cheese and stuff. That was, I thought we had won the lottery or something when she made that. I was like, what is this?
Ricotta cheese is just a cousin to cottage cheese.
Fancy. Yeah, but it's not the same, dude. It's not. Don't put that on ricotta cheese. But she did make those for a while, and I thought that was one of my favorite things she made as well. But always tons of snacks. We did have a lot of snacks growing up. Always available. Tons of snacks, chips. Do you guys? I was thinking about this the other day. It's funny that we're on this conversation because. Do you remember the first time you ate a whole bag of chips?
Yes.
Like a full-size bag?
I feel like that was at such a young age that no, I don't remember. Because
it was a young age, but I remember, dude.
I think I was more of a teenager when it happened, and I'm sure like it was probably at a birthday party.
No, dude. I was watching a horror movie. I'm pretty sure it was one of the apartments we lived in Florida, so I would have been like kindergarten. And ate a whole bag of chips. I'm fairly certain that's a
what
memory.
What was the bag of chips?
Yeah, what was?
No, I couldn't tell you then. It was probably. I mean, it was probably Doritos. Probably the OG bag with the
Yeah.
clear where you can see through it, so you can like pick out the good chips, or just like plain Lay's, probably, or barbecue Lay's. I feel like we had a lot of barbecue Lay's around the house. But thinking about those old '90s, like late '80s, early '90s, there was a lot of stuff that went away that we used to like. Do you remember any of the like discontinued stuff?
The one that stays on my mind constantly because I wish every time I go in now and I see a Twizzler, it's Twizzlers
Disgusting.
that are like multi-flavored. I forgot.
No, those are good.
like
yeah.
the rainbow one?
The rainbow ones. They're called something, but back in the '90s, early '90s, Starburst had Starburst fruit twists.
I remember those.
Yeah.
And those were very similar. So every time I see those, I'm like, man, that is a candy that should have never. Starburst, if you're ever listening to this, which is
Shout
not
out.
going to happen,
But
but bring those back.
Yeah.
But they were amazing.
Those were good. I remember those.
And I do miss another thing, is any kind of drink in a glass bottle. I know you can still get them, but I feel like they're not the same. I used to love going and getting like we would go fishing. We would come home from military family. We'd go fishing, and I would go with my uncle, or me and Dad would stop at a gas station, and I would get like those IBC root beer or cream sodas, or I'd get a Welch's grape, and there is nothing like getting a Welch's grape in a glass bottle. Man,
I used to when we would go down to my dad's mom and dad's down the Shepherds in Pine Knob. They had the store, and I would get a bottle of apple juice, and this is funny. I would get a bottle of apple juice and I would get the candy cigarettes and pretend like I was drinking beer and smoking cigarettes.
And this
was
at age 4 before he ate the whole bag of chips.
Yeah, a little sign of things to come. No, I'm just kidding. No, but a bottle of apple juice, something about that was so good. And those little candy cigarettes where you could puff on them and the like stuff would blow out or whatever.
I don't think I ever had any that would.
Well,
blow
these
out,
were the
but-
chalky ones. They had the gum ones where the stuff would blow out, and then they had the chalky ones. These were the chalkies.
But even the chalky ones had enough chalk on them
Yeah.
that you could like.
They were disgusting.
You could make it.
You could draw on sidewalks. in them,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
But that was my glass bottle thing, was apple juice at the Pine Knob store. I didn't really get down with like the Welch's and all that. And the my mom probably didn't trust me with glass. She was probably like, "This guy, we're doing bottles."
Brad, what about you?
Surge.
Oh yeah,
Surge.
Summer of '97.
Surge, and then the Doritos, the 3D Doritos that were just very airy and very crisp.
Yep. We tried to come back out with something called that, and I was like, "This is not."
Yeah, they weren't.
I'm not. Some people that I know try to come back out. I work for Frito-Lay, so anyway, we tried to come out with a 3D Dorito. Everybody immediately, all the '90s kids were like, "No,
not even close."
Good try.
It was.
You know what's funny about Surge? There was the summer of '97. Living with Mamaw Pepal. I played Tiger Woods '97. I can remember that, and I'm pretty sure I only drank Surge and chocolate milk the whole summer.
The whole summer.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't remember drinking water.
So how are those diabetes shots doing?
Yeah,
for you
right.
now?
Yeah, I'll tell you how bad it was. Same summer when we went back to Florida, to we would have went. It would have been Virginia. I took a big gallon of chocolate milk with me on the trip.
Oh wow!
That I had refilled like 3 times before then, like with syrup and more milk.
You're just making it yourself.
I was just walking around like a
weightlifter with water, but you're doing it with chocolate milk.
Yeah, just a jug of chocolate milk, and I would just refill it and make it more chocolatey. But another treat to go with it. I remember this trip going back to Mom and Dad's. Had the big jug of chocolate milk and a whole packet of the Hershey's cookies and cream bars.
Good stuff.
It was when they first came out. Smashed that whole thing on the way to Virginia. Terrible.
I think one of the other things that I can remember too is like, do y'all remember when you could get a 20-ounce Pepsi, and then it would have like you want a free 20-ounce under the cap, and like the exhilaration of, am I going to win another free drink on the backside of this?
Never won anything off of those.
I mean, I won a few, but I mean, it was just, that's just the silly stuff that you think about that you remember.
They did a lot of cool promos. Remember when everybody walked around with Marlboro gear on? Because everybody would turn in like cigarette things. They'd have a sweet Marlboro jacket. Like, not me, obviously. But
thanks Mom and Dad for smoking
or something too. You know?
Not my mom. I think she probably smoked like some cheap cigarettes or something. But like, it was so cool. The 90s were a very like advertised driven like era. Like everything was turned up to like 10.
Like I think that was like the height of the Coke Wars or the soda wars.
And that was so much fun. Like watching commercials was fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they were always just, everything was loud and bright and fun.
You and I were talking not too long ago. I think I would almost, which I've got like my shoe collection and all that stuff. But as far as like clothes and attire, I would do anything right now to either have a Charlotte Hornets or Chicago Bulls starter jacket. With the pocket, the pullover with the pocket right here. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to I wish they would come out with that, but with the same quality as what they were.
I feel like I read something not too long ago that said that they were about to reintroduce all that stuff because it's fashion like everything else, just kind of
everybody will snatch up the Charlotte's ones because that's what everybody had back then.
Well, there was also and if you were on the third tier of that, it was an Orlando Magic. Yeah, because that's the Shaq and Penny years.
I had a Penny Hardaway jersey. A girl gave it to me. I thought I was so cool. No, I had she gave me a Larry Johnson Charlotte Hornets. Gotcha. That was like the 2 NBA jerseys I had. But remember when those Champions NBA jerseys, like everybody wore those to school? Yeah. And you wore them all over the place. I had Kentucky ones. I had a Kentucky one that was Travis Ford, and I wore it. I would play basketball in it, like multiple days in a row without washing it. Disgusting. Just gross.
So with that, how many jerseys did you have? Do you remember?
That one I had one. It was number 5, and then I got.
No, I'm talking about just overall whole collection.
The most 2 or 3. I had a couple NBA ones. I had Larry Johnson and Penny Hardaway, and I had my Travis Ford one. That was said I played basketball every day that I played basketball. I wore that because, and it was so gross. I never washed it. Never remember washing.
My one was a Dennis Rodman.
Nice.
But that was my favorite player growing up, and I think you talked about it last week. Whenever you said I kind of play like a bull in a china shop, well, go watch those old Dennis Rodman highlights, and that's how I like to play. I think I should have been born in the 70s so I could play in the 80s so I could like beat people up. But I feel very Bill Lambier-ish. Bad Boys Pistons kind of vibes.
Another, getting back to the snack topic, and I've researched this one before, and there's a lot of people that say the same thing. Funny how that works. Why hasn't Nabisco brought, or Keebler, whoever brought back pizzerias?
Well, I just had this discussion with somebody else. Somebody posted this the other day on Facebook. But pizzerias were a top-notch chip. I'm talking better than Dorito, better than anything. It was something, because it was the same thing as a Dorito as far as shape.
Oh, it was amazing.
But it had that cheesy pizza flavor.
Cheesy.
Oh,
Yeah,
man, it was so good.
And they were seasoned up so well. And I feel like it was just a little time when they... I remember we would get those quite often. We always had those, and we had chicken and a biscuit.
Yeah, chicken and a biscuit
Those
were
were
good
awesome,
too.
dude.
Or those are still
so
around,
good,
but they're
yeah.
good.
I don't know if I've
Mom
ever had
always
a
got those.
pizzeria chip.
Oh, man, they're so good.
Oh, they were good, dude.
I mean, if I do, I don't remember.
They were Keebler or Nabisco. I can't remember which one. Maybe.
But I guess
It was Keebler.
Yeah.
It was Keebler.
They were fantastic.
And I can't imagine. I like to dip my stuff and stuff, but going back to that time frame, I can't imagine dipping.
No.
They were so flavorful
I dipped them
without.
into my mouth, just
Yeah.
right out of the bag or box or whatever that came in. Yeah, like those. There was another one I was thinking of. Can't remember.
I tell you one thing I miss, and my eyes lit up when Brad sent us that text that day about school pizza. Because I was like, this is going to be awesome. But we got them, and they weren't as close to school pizza, which I did get the cheese.
I've seen a lot of people make them on YouTube.
But I just miss a rectangle, squared, pepperonied school pizza. Man,
with corn.
Give me a side of corn and squirt me some French dressing right there.
The French dressing.
Oh
dipping.
man, that meal is. When I hear Aiden come home from school and talk about his pizza,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they just get Papa John's or something,
think
or
so.
it's some kind of
Yeah,
like manufactured pizza.
Yeah.
Like, give me old school pizza back. I don't even want what they have now.
Dude, I would tear up those soy burgers. I'd get two, make a double. I'd be like, you gonna eat that? I'd get double fries. I was weird about school lunch. There was some years I didn't eat it, and then there was years where I ate double. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I was just kind of on the fence about it. But wasn't it funny how like when we worked at Captain D's, like I would eat lunch and I would be starving by the time I got out of school, and then as soon as I got to work, I would fix me some food and eat it.
Oh yeah, it's funny you went to that because I was about to go to that right now. We're sitting here talking about food that was good when we were young, and we're neglecting. We've been around for 40 years. So even in my 20s, that food is not still around. Talk about Captain D's, the Captain's Burger.
Yeah.
The Captain's Burger or the Double Burger, as soon as I would come into work, go throw me a Captain's Burger in the broiler, put whatever kind of toppings I wanted on it.
So
Man,
good.
it was so good. It would hit the spot.
That was the only thing we weren't supposed to eat, remember?
Yeah.
We were like,
Don't.
Well, we could eat it. It was the only thing we couldn't get a discount.
yeah, you
Yeah.
couldn't get a discount on it.
But you say Captain D's, and I don't even know if y'all have ever really touched on this, but that's where I met.
Yeah,
where we all met.
We haven't touched on it yet.
Like, that's probably the one thing that we all had in common before anything was the fact that we all worked together.
Yep.
Everybody in town worked at the D's, man. That's a rite of passage for many.
I mean, will our kids work there?
No.
I've said that in
Mine's
the past.
like no.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm never.
Yeah, your wife even worked at Captain D's with us.
Yeah,
so,
that's
My wife worked at Captain D's afterwards, after we had all left.
If this podcast ever makes it out of this county, you'll understand how small of a county we actually live in. The stories we tell, because it's like, hey, we worked at the same place and get gas at the same place, eat at the same 5 places. Like, we're painting a picture of just how
small
tiny
town,
this area is.
small town Kentucky, man. And like I said, Captain D's is a primary. I mean, you have that and McDonald's and Mr. Getty's, basically. I mean, there's a few other places, but
How much would
that's
you,
people's
speaking
career.
of that, we're getting nostalgic. How much would you love to have the old Mr. Getty's back?
Oh gosh!
Oh man,
Boom.
Just the game room alone.
Let's go.
I felt like the food tasted different back then. Like
Yeah.
like a cheese pizza was not the same cheese pizza as what we have now. I feel
I mean, it's obviously better.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's probably all the crap they put in it now, but I just love that place. How dark it was. Had that big giant TV in there. we would always go
right
on
in the
like
corner of
if
the
we
building.
ever went to Mr. Getty's, it was on Sunday, so I would be mad because the race would be on. But they would always have the race on in there.
And on that big screen that had a bunch
so
of pizza
I'd be
boxes
trying to
around.
peek at it and stuff. But man,
Well, I mean, and something that we're probably forgetting even more than that is the Golden Corral.
I was about to say it,
Yeah,
brother.
Golden Corral.
Me and you, we had just started like becoming real good friends when Golden Corral was still around. So me and you would go every once in a while to Golden Corral and take down a buffet.
Not only would we take down the food buffet, but the dessert buffet they would put gummy bears on the that you
Put 'em
put
in
your ice cream or whatever.
Yeah.
I would go get a plate full of just gummy bears.
yeah.
I would just smash those gummy bears. But yeah, and
Like a 6-course.
and I feel like that Golden Corral was different than the Golden Corral you go to if you go to Elizabethtown. You know what I mean? Like it's night and day different.
But I wonder if it's just like our hometown nostalgia of it, or is it our...
I don't think it is, because I'm going to tell you the opposite side of that. If you go to Wendy's in town,
It's terrible.
it is terrible compared to going to Wendy's somewhere else. Now, granted, that's not a nostalgic
Again, I hope this
thing, 'cause-
podcast doesn't get out to too many people.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we might as well. Let's. You know what? Let's hit the hard topics. Let's hit them hard.
yeah,
We're
hit
not
'em
going to
hard.
sugarcoat it. Wendy's is terrible.
Yeah, Wendy's
Turn it
is
back into
terrible.
Burger King. They'll ruin it too. It's fine. But
I do miss Burger King,
I
though,
miss
here.
Burger King. We went to Burger King in Hardinsburg the other. Shout out Hardinsburg for actually having a Burger King, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
We didn't get any chocolate stuff
Didn't get
with
any
our
chocolate
churro.
sauce for our churro fries.
They act like we didn't know what we were talking about, and they do have chocolate sauce for it. But whatever, we'll let that slide.
Burger King has a special place in my heart, and it should yours too, because if you were on a military base in anywhere in the United States,
Yeah.
you have a Burger King.
We had a lot of Whoppers growing up because Whoppers were always like a deal back then.
Yeah.
Those and we always got if we ever got Arby's, it was like you would get like 5 for $5 or something.
Yeah.
But they never had the sauce on. We'd never get it with the cheddar on there. You would have to ask, can I get some cheddar on this? Like, because I think they did like 5 for $5, something crazy cheap. So that's a lot of things we got. But Whoppers were always a good deal. Were you guys? Let me ask you this. We talk about fast food for a minute. Let's get on this. When you ate at McDonald's, even as a kid, obviously you got Happy Meals, right? Because you wanted the toy. They had some sweet toys, but at what point did you feel like you were starving to death after eating a Happy Meal and you had to have like a Big Mac? Because I remember early on like getting a Big Mac. Like that was my go-to.
I'm trying to think, because it took me a while to get a Big Mac.
I think I was probably 10 or 12.
God.
In that. But
10 or 12 months.
yeah,
No,
I was probably 10 or 12 years old whenever I had my first like big kid. Like, I'm gonna order a number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was hard to get out of the like because they did have some cool toys when we were young. The toys were great.
But going back to just childhood stuff, I think once you order your first meal like that, I think that's whenever you lose your. It's when you lose your childhood.
Innocence.
Well, I mean, it's when you lose. It's when you lose part of your childhood, though. I mean, you're no longer a kid at that point.
Yeah.
You're you're an adult.
You order the food in the drive-thru and your mom reaches back to give it to you and you go thanks.
Yeah.
You're just all of a sudden like 14.
I remember still trying to get the toy though, and get my go-to was always a number 2, like which back then was 2 cheeseburgers and fries. And I would get it supersized, and all that good stuff.
Oh my god!
But,
yeah, of course.
But I would try to still get the toy on top of the number 2. So hey, come on, can I get the toy?
They called it Thomas. So like, can I get a can I get a Thomas number 2 with a toy? I remember the toys were so great back then. Remember the little like Mac Tonight guys?
Until it came out with the Thai Beanie Babies, and then that's whenever it all went downhill.
Yeah, that was a big year. I feel like those took over. But yeah, I was out of it by then. I was already getting like 2 Big Macs probably by then. About 12 years old, something like that.
When we lived in Maryland, we would come home for Christmas and different times through the year, and my aunt at the time was working at Hardee's.
Oh.
And when they would close
To have one on the inside would be nuts.
Oh man! And back then, Hardee's was a little different than what it is now, because Hardee's now has these huge, big, elaborate burgers. But I remember back then,
fried chicken.
They had fried chicken dinners
and the roast beef sandwich.
But she would always bring home like mushroom and Swiss burgers, which are very similar to what they have now, but just
good.
they were much smaller.
Yeah, they were awesome.
And man, I remember just being able to eat those when she would come. And that makes me think about when we would get off work, man,
Yeah.
if you wanted a value pack, it was ready to go for you when you got off work. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
sometimes
So-
you'd be like, oh, I accidentally dropped all this fish. Guess I got to take it home. My mom still talks about that.
It's
She's
funny.
like, I remember you would bring fish home. I'm like, yeah.
My
So can
mom
you
will talk about that too because she was working night shift at the hospital while I was working there. So she would always call me as we were getting ready to close, and she'd be like, "Hey, what do y'all got left tonight? Like, what's for dinner tonight?" Kinda.
Yeah.
So I would always have to make a stop at the hospital on the way home and
Mm-hmm.
take the extra
Nice.
leftover fish over there. And
We were always bound to for sure have hush puppies.
always,
Like hush puppies was almost an automatic, and
especially
then,
if
and then
Travis was
fish.
working.
Yeah, I'm throwing down 50. I'm not going less than 50 in a basket. I don't. It was a challenge for me to see how many I could fit in here without sticking. So, I mean, that's how you had to keep it.
Yeah.
You know, I still do that at work.
Yeah.
I'm like, how many bags of chip can I pick up in one hand? And then, like, I'll say out loud, "That's 10. That's a new record." And everybody's looking around. I'm like, I mean, you gotta have fun. You know.
Yeah, there's something about those good old Captain D's days.
Oh yeah.
So I started at Captain D's in 97. You started in
Golly.
what, 98?
No, like 2000.
Oh,
I
2000.
was a sophomore. It was when you were a senior.
No, I'm wrong. It wouldn't have been 97. So you're right. It was 98. 98. It was. I think it was August of 98 is when I started Captain D's. When did you start?
April of 01.
April of 01.
So I would have been either right. I think I started right after Easter, so right after Lent.
Gotcha.
Had
Perfect
started.
time.
Perfect time to come in.
Yeah. You don't want to start doing that. That's.
I try to
putting you
do
through the ringer.
when I talk to people about Captain D's and how long I've been there. I usually give them a cumulative time. I don't say it
You're
one
like,
time.
it's been.
I think you
It's
don't
been 83 years.
I don't even think you have to give a cumulative time. I think you could just go back and say, I worked with so and so.
Yeah.
Or do you
Different
remember
eras.
so and so? Because I think there was enough of us that worked there that, like, somebody knows somebody, and you can say, "Oh, I worked there while Travis did," or "I worked there while Thomas did." Or
How long would you say you were there total in combined time?
probably 6 years.
You
Probably.
Let's see. I started in April and May of 2000, and I left in November 2003. Then I came back for like a couple weeks, so just 3.5 years.
Gotcha.
Now, are you counting the BB's time whenever we were
No,
splitting time?
No, I am counting solely Captain D's because BB's was a different.
Well, then I would
Different
I would say
animals.
probably 5 because I think in 03 after I graduated is whenever we got ready to open BB's. So I had went up there. So it was probably, and then I had went back and forth
Gotcha.
for a few years too.
And for those of you all listening who may not know BB's, even locally or our kids, BB's was a restaurant we had here in town. That was an Italian restaurant. It started off very crappy. It got really good, in my opinion. Honestly, in my opinion, it was probably one of the best restaurants we had there for a while.
It started off very Fazoli's
Yep.
like.
Yep.
That's when I worked there.
Yep.
I was
and
like, we're
it
Fazoli's
was-
2.0.
and it was marginal at best. And then I think
I thought it was better. I loved
once
it.
we revamped, once we revamped and did a whole lot more, it turned out to be something. Probably
That's when you boys abandoned me down there at the D's.
That's whenever
Yeah.
Thomas and I abandoned.
Went up there and got
Travis.
to play sweet golden tea every day.
Yeah, Brad and I went there full time, and we were managing BB's only. We would only have to go to Captain D's in case of emergency, right?
Yep.
So it wasn't that often.
And we
Yeah,
left
I
Travis-
gotta talk. If I'm talking about BB's, since my family listens to this, it's, all the listeners out there, all 7 of you, got to shout out Tashi for getting fired at BB's.
Yeah.
For calling into work to play in the Powder Puff game.
Yeah.
So that's her little shout out today.
So many of our families and close friends have had their start in either Captain D's or BB's.
Well, I mean,
It just
my
amazes me.
younger sister worked there.
Yeah, Courtney did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a who's who, pretty much. There's an era of people in this town that it's like what's that, 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon? It's
Yeah.
degrees from Captain D's. Everybody or their spouse.
Yep.
A lot of couples that are married now that work there, like me and my wife both worked there, didn't work there together.
Yeah.
One minute together, and we ended up managing to, meet later on and get married. But yeah, it's that place. We talk about it a lot. It's kind of we seem to always go down this path a lot when
Yeah.
we talk. But I still, when we go in there and eat, I still get very like emotional kind of when I'm sitting there eating. It still smells the same, and I remember like sitting. I always tell Maggie, I'm like, that booth back there is the smoker's booth. That's where we all, like 10 of us would pile in that booth.
Yep.
And smoke cigarettes and secondhand smoke and talk and eat.
Well, that's whenever smoking was still allowed in restaurants.
And really, that was the first. I have people. There's people, and then there's moments in time where that shaped me as a person. And socially, obviously, work ethic wise.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an awesome worker now. No, I'm just kidding. Mediocre at best. But that, socially, I was really quiet when I started there and stuff.
Yeah,
Didn't have a lot of friends. I had like
quiet.
a couple core friends, but like I met you, I met a lot of people, and you were one of the ones that probably in the early days opened me up because you were loud and crazy, and like you said funny stuff and did funny things. And at first I was like put off by it. I was like, whoa, this guy's nuts. Like he's mean. Like I thought you were mean to me. I thought you were being mean, but I found out later that was kind of your just way of getting in with people.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So that was very crucial to me as far as not being like a backwards kid.
Yeah.
Which I very much was when I started working there. I was like, oh, don't talk to me.
Ashley and I talk about, if once Aiden gets to the point of getting a job, we talk about him working there, and she's like, I don't want him coming back because the smell. If you guys can imagine the smell of my car back then, the smell of anything, it just was awful. Of your clothes coming in, and it'd have batter all over it where you've been dipping fish.
Mom was talking about the other day about how she would about the process she had to wash my clothes separately from everything else.
Yeah, it would
because it would start
ruin
bleeding
everything.
And it was we as the people that worked there, you just kind of. It got used to it. You didn't smell it, but everybody else.
Oh yeah,
like
you remember trying to go to a school dance after you'd work? I'd be like, man, I get off at 8 on Friday. You spray out a bunch of Axe,
not Axe. I used to wear that
CK1 or something.
Adidas cologne for Walmart, and I'd be like hosing it down, just masking the smell.
Yeah, hoping it would mask.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna get off at 8 on Friday. I should be able to make it to the school dance.
That's so funny you talk about it. I was just talking to Maggie about school dances the other day, and I was like, I didn't get to go to a lot of them because I worked. I said, but I would go to them after and meet up with a friend or whatever, and it would always be like after it was letting out, have a couple memories of that. But like, I mean, obviously I went to the proms and stuff, and we've done that, but we were talking about school dances because they don't have a lot of them anymore. They used to have one like every. Seemed like they had one all the time. Yeah. Then they had the obvious ones like homecoming and all that. But I would drive up there in my nasty batter dipped clothes. Yeah. And just like try to talk to whoever, and I'm sure they were like.
As you walked in your feet like hit the ground, you'd have batter and fish guts just like falling out as you walked.
I finally got to where I would spray my shoes off before I left. I was like, I'm not getting this in my sweet Ford Probe.
Man, there was a lot of good memories for me in that Probe.
Yeah.
There was
that's pause. You can't like seriously, just because it's that's just funny. A Ford Probe. I was talking about that car the other day to somebody. We were talking about cars, and I was like, well, you guys didn't have a Ford Probe. Like, what kind of name is that? You know what I mean? But it was a cool car. Like, everybody was like, I like your car. Flip up headlights, all the goofy stuff. Like, but what a name, Yeah. And all the 90s cars were named something stupid. But
Brad, what was your first car?
My first car was a 1983 Chevy
S10.
S10.
That's a good S10 though.
Well, I mean,
it was a long bed. I remember it was brown.
I remember that there was so much play in the steering wheel. You had to turn the steering wheel like 8 times before it would actually turn. I was actually going to Travis's house one day. We were going to play some video games, and like it started like just. I'm not a car guy.
We went to town to get food, and we come back, and I was like, there was coolant dripping out of the dash, and I was like, I looked down, I was like, did I spill a Mountain Dew or something?
Yeah.
And what it was the heater core was plugged. Yeah. So
and shout out Ed Shepherd.
Yeah. MacGyver Shepherd come out.
I think he put a rock and a hose clamp on there or something.
He did. He took a rock out of the driveway and plugged the heater core, clamped it. Huh. Yeah, and that was that's where the legend was born. Because then David, my friend, David, his linkage broke in our driveway one time, and Dad got under his truck and fixed it. Like, it was always having to fix something for one of my friends. The legend was born that day.
But the cool thing about that is, like, you know, even I think, you know, thinking about it now, I was 16, 17 years old. I probably didn't even offer to pay him anything. So, Eddie, if I owe you money, just let me know.
It's with interest, Dad.
Yeah. But it was just
20
neat.
years of interest.
It was just neat to
plus.
know that it was that you just have friends or their parents or whatever. Whenever you get in a tight spot, that you could just kind of, you've always got somebody that's going to help you out.
Oh yeah.
You know, like if you need a couch moved at the last minute, or
Oh yeah,
sweet couch.
This couch here. These guys helped me move this.
This thing is so cozy. This is nice. I bragged on it last time. I won't go into it into detail today, but yeah, for the viewer, you can obviously see how comfortable it is.
My first was a 1989 Oldsmobile Calais, and if y'all don't know what that is, it was very similar to like an '89 Grand Am, Pontiac Grand Am.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It
probably
was
like
just
the
an
same
Oldsmobile
platform.
version of it. It was a 2-door coupe type thing. It blew a head gasket, so I didn't have it very long, and then I went to the old '93 hard body Nissan. Y'all probably remember
The one I used to try to teach me to drive it.
Yeah,
the,
I've tried to.
the little red truck.
Yeah, little red truck. Yeah.
My first official car was a 1987 Mustang convertible, 4-cylinder, 5-speed. My parents gave it to me on my 16th birthday party. Had no idea that they were giving it to me. They did an awesome job of keeping it a secret. I don't know how they did to this day, but it was my aunt's. She drove it for a while, and I always talked about how I liked it. And so they bought it from her, and they painted it. They put a headlight. You remember how headlight covers were cool, like the black headlight covers? And it was so awesome, dude. But I just never got comfortable driving a stick.
Yeah.
I can't drive a stick. What? Just kidding. I can. It's just not
I
pretty.
can't.
Yeah.
I don't. I tried. I tried to learn.
I can do it. It's nasty.
It
Like,
might be nasty. I mean, I would probably have more confidence doing it now as I'm older.
I got to drive it hard. I got to like gas it up and squall tires to get going. I got to hit second gear. Like I can't drive it just smooth. But anyway, got that car. Dad took me driving one time. We took off at Mamaw's Road, and we turned where me and David used to live, down that road where David's parents live. And we're cruising down that road, and I'm doing fine. I'm shifting through the gears. That car drove really nice. And he's like, let's stop on a hill. So we stop right in front of David's house. And I can't get it to go. And so we're rolling back to the ditch. So we roll kind of into the ditch. Dad's like, all right, man. He was like, let me try it. So we get in, and it was in third gear. That's why I couldn't get it to take off. But David remembers it because he saw me out there doing it. Like we talk about it sometimes. He's like, I remember when you tried to drive that car. So needless to say, that was Dad's car after that. And then I got my first probe, which was my Papaw's 96 probe. Drove it for about a month and then wrecked it. It was the first serious wreck.
Was that the horse or no?
No, I just wrecked it. I wasn't paying attention. I wrecked on Kefauver Road.
Gotcha.
I remember the horse.
So that was the first one. I wish I wouldn't have wrecked that car. It was a nice car. That was like, my parents did a good job of helping me as much as they could with insurance and stuff. That was the last free car, so to speak. After that, it was like, listen, brother, you gotta
figure this out on your own.
You gotta help us out here. Like I got a job after that and everything. Like, shout out to them for trying to help me. I wasn't helping myself being a garbage driver though. I was the worst. It's all coming back to haunt me now because I've got one going to get her permit April 21st.
Wow.
So you should always keep your eyes on the road. 10 and 2, no distractions.
Cell phone in the glove box.
That's right. Yeah. Cell phone, don't even take it with you. Actually, keep it in the trunk. But no, those were my first, I guess, 2 cars. It was kind of, to me, it was like I have to tell people I had a combination of these 2 cars. The one I got and I didn't drive, and the one I got and drove for a month and wrecked it. But it was a nice car for a month, Mm-hmm. And then it was a downhill spiral of like lemons and sprinkled in with a nice car here and there. But I had some head gaskets blew a head gasket right in front of my Mamaw Papaw's house one time in a 87 Buick Regal, and had to open my door and Flintstone down the hill on Caney Creek Church Road. Tasha was with me, and so had that. That was fun, My dad was I think my mom used to get aggravated because my dad would come home and he would tell me about a car he saw on the way to work. That was that Honda Civic. You remember that Civic I had that the air ride?
The blue or whatever.
It was like blue and white. The Fast and Furious Civic. That was a dad coming home from Hallsville. That happened many a time. So shout out Dad for keeping the dream alive.
If you guys could go back now to when you were a kid, and when I say kid, I don't mean teenager. I mean kid. If you could go back to your kid, what is one memory that you have that you would like to go back and do? And I'll give you an example. Is we used to live in Germany, me and my mom and dad and my sister. We would walk this thing called the switchbacks, and it was like a exercise thing we would do. And we would go up these steps. It was a huge amount of steps. To me, it felt like 1,000 steps that we would climb, but I was a kid, so it was probably like 20. But we would go to the top of these steps, and then we would go down the back of this mountain, and it would have something called switchbacks. We would get to the bottom of it, and there would be a park that would have a metal slide that we would go down the slide.
Be about 150,000 degrees.
Yeah. And they had an ice cream shop, and we would get some ice cream, and we would do that, and then we would go back to, and we lived in Germany, like I said, so we would go back to the apartment or whatever. But for some reason, that is something that if I had a magic journey that I could go do, I would go do that right now just to say, hey, I did that again. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Brad.
You're gonna have to go.
Mine's easy. It would be riding a fertilized truck with my papa. The last time I rode with him in a fertilized truck, I was in 7th grade. I can take you to the field that we spread fertilizer in. And the bad thing is I don't remember many times prior to that because that's been 20. So that would have been like 20, probably 30 years ago. But he would, when I would stay during the summertime, he would spread fertilizer all day for Otis Bryant. And sometimes he would come and pick me up, and I'd get to ride with him in an old nasty fertilized truck. Or one time I remember he drove an 18-wheeler all the way down to Tennessee to get like a load of something, and I got to ride with him all the way down there. So for me, it would be do that because I can remember like just thinking how cool he was that he could drive a truck like that, with like 50 years and like, a nasty old smelly truck that, seemed like it barely ran. And then like, I remember we'd get in the field and he'd get out and start messing around in the back. And then, just all the sounds and the smell and everything, like that's what I would do.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I think, so we grew up probably like over on Frame Street. Mm-hmm. And there was always just a bunch of kids over there, and that was probably the closest thing that I could probably think of just going outside and riding your bicycle and playing with your buddies and just being able to be a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I would probably want to go back and do because I look at like my kids today, my boys, like they don't have that. They don't have those.
Gosh,
they don't have those opportunities to just go hang out and play baseball in the street or kickball in the street or hang out with their buddies or whatever. I think those are probably the times that I'm maybe like it's simple.
Yeah.
But it's just the times that you miss that you you're never going to get back to.
Yeah. Did y'all live on base a lot?
Yeah, we always lived on base.
That was like the amplified version of that because you could go wherever. You never had to worry about anything. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? You couldn't get off
like trick-or-treating.
Oh, my gosh.
Trick-or-treating for me was mom and dad they may have gone with us when we were little. Yeah. But when I was like 7, 8, and 9, mom and dad stayed in the house.
There'd be like
you just walk down the street.
50, like going
you
house
just
to
go
house.
with the kids. But, I think about what you're saying, and I think about Aiden. For example, right now, for those listening, our closest neighbor is just my grandparents, and they're a little bit down the road. But we live out in the country. I mean, there's no place for Aiden to go ride a bike or go play with other kids. You know what I mean? Unless we were to take him. So Aiden doesn't have this childhood like I grew up with where you have your next door neighbor that's constantly saying, hey, come over and play Nintendo with me. Or let's go up to the street and go to the park or whatever. I couldn't imagine not having that. And I feel sorry that Aiden doesn't have that.
But
it's
they
just
have
different.
But I think they have so much more. Like they have the ability to play a video game with their buddy and not have to sit right beside them, and only 8 feet away from the television because you have a cord that it can only go that far. I mean, they do have stuff that we didn't have too, but it's just I think that's where the social part of our lives are changing so much too. Is that we're probably not as social as we used to be or even need to be now.
Yeah, man, I do. I've told Maggie that for years. I'm like, I wish you could have lived on base, like when I did, because I mean, there was, we lived. So when we lived in Florida, it was not. We lived there from 88 or 89 to 95. We moved to Virginia in 96, and I mean, we just rode our bikes. We stayed out till dark. My mom was never worried about where we were at. Like you said, trick or treating was door to door with like hordes of 50 kids. Like, it was just a lot of fun. And staying the night. I remember I would stay the night. I had a friend in when we lived in Jacksonville. That, I mean, there would be like this when I would get back from Mamaw Papaws in the summer, or if it was like a spring break or whatever, we'd stay the night with each other every night. He'd either stay at my house or I'd stay at his house, and it was just so much fun. I mean, I'm sure the kids are having fun. It's just a different type of fun, like Brad said. But it's, we didn't have all the. Maybe we would have been the same way. I don't know if we would have had access to phones and all that crap back then. I don't know if we would have been like we were. I'm glad we weren't though.
Which, I mean, I talked to Aiden a lot about video games when we were a kid. Like, yes, we had video games, but my day was not built around playing Nintendo or Super Nintendo. You know what I'm saying? Whereas now your day is built around that. Back then, you might say, well, it's raining today, so I guess we're going to have to play roller.
I remember...
I'm trying to think of double dribble or whatever.
I remember my mom being like, get outside. Like, like if we ran in the house, like if we were in and out of the house a lot, she'd be like, you got to go outside. Like, get out. Like, air's running or whatever, like.
So you weren't even allowed to come back inside until the sun was down on the.
She'd let us in to get drinks and stuff, but she didn't like us running in and out. I remember that, like, which I didn't blame her. I'm a parent now. I know how aggravating it is. I'm probably.
You shut the door.
Yeah, shut the door. You're letting the air out. Especially now I'm a dad, dude. That thermostat goes up. I'm like, what? But we just, and you. Another thing is, I think we were. It was easier to find things to do. We probably did say we were bored all the time. I'm sure we were annoyingly bored, quote unquote. But then you could do so many cool things. There were so many cool things to explore. Mm-hmm. I remember this is my sisters will know about this. Well, especially Tasha. I don't know about Tyra if she was too young. But we used to go to this place. We called it the Wall. It was on base, and we rode our bikes to it. And it was basically where the road just broke off, and there was the ocean, where it was whatever it was. It wasn't the ocean. It was like a river or whatever. But we would go down there and sit on this wall, and you could see like all kinds of wildlife out there and stuff. Like you could totally drown. But that was 90s kids. You just went and did whatever. We used to play hide and seek in the hospital on base. Like, that's crazy. Go to commissary and run around in there. Go to the exchange, run around in there.
I just remember, like, I was telling somebody this story the other day. When Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves came out, like, I used to go out in the woods.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like a very scary place to be. But again, I was a kid. But, I would go out there and try to mimic and build the forts that Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves characters were building at the time. That we put our minds and creativity to use. If I tell Aiden to go outside and do something now, it's like 5 minutes later he's back in the house like, hey, I'm done. And I'm like, did you play or do anything?
Yeah.
So.
We would just tear stuff apart, remember?
Yeah.
Just vandalize, spray paint. No, I'm just kidding. I probably did some of that. I have. So I might as well tell this story. I want to tell it on here because it's so this is also the downside of having too much freedom. So me and this kid were walking. I lived in Jacksonville. We were walking around, just being bored. Just terribly bored. I think I was in fifth grade, fourth or fifth grade. I think I was in fifth, and there was this basketball goal in these people's yards. You know how base is. It's like two houses connected by like a carport or whatever. There was this house and it had a basketball goal. It was like an adjustable basketball goal, but it wasn't like a good one. It was like a step up from like a Little Tykes or whatever. So it was metal, but it was still kind of like a kid size, So I was like, sweet. I was like, we're going to play basketball on this. And it's lowered. We're going to dunk on it. We didn't even have a basketball. that we were literally
using,
just
like, rocks and
pretending to play and dunk. So obviously in '95, you live in Florida. You're a Shaq fan.
Yeah.
You're a Magic fan. So I was like hanging on this rim, and the whole thing kept falling over because it didn't have enough like water in the base or whatever. So I was like, brother, stand on the back of that thing. I'm gonna hang on it. We're gonna Shaq this thing down, you know. And so I'm hanging on this thing, and it comes down like, bing, bing, ding, ding. Nuts and bolts go flying out, and it falls down. And this is how stupid I was as a kid, and how just free I was, if you want to call it that for lack of better words. We just left it there. We didn't even. we so
didn't tell nobody.
Yeah, no, we were like, whoa, sweet. Shaq, I'm Shaq. Now, you know, I'm gonna go tell everybody I broke this basketball goal.
There's no longer any unsolved mysteries in Jacksonville, Florida.
That's right.
We know who broke
No, this one was solved very quick that night, actually. So I go home, and my room was in the front of the house, so you could see right out to the yard. Like, it's all very vivid to me. I could see like right out in the road and all that, the street. Well, I remember this. My mom might correct me on this. I remember I thought it sounded like blue lights, and I heard somebody knock on the door. And my dad and mom's like, come in here real quick. Now, the thing is, I didn't even think twice about what it was. I'm like, what's going on? You know, like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, and so I go up there, and the security or cop or whatever he was like, your son and this other kid, there's people saying they broke this basketball goal. You want to hear the funny thing about this? So you live on base. There's not a lot of distance between houses and stuff, but you would think if I'm going to break a basketball goal, I'm going to break it like 5 streets over. Yeah. Literally 200 yards from my house, around the corner on the next street. Yeah, you could see it from my window. You could see this house. So I deny it. My dad's like, did you do that? And I'm like, no. I was like, that's not us. So, of course, they go to the other kid's house. And this kid, I don't even remember his name, but I only hung out with him for a short while. And this is probably why. He was a really good kid. And his parents were really good. They were a little more strict. Not saying my parents weren't, but he was a good kid. Totally influenced by me. So he, of course, spills the beans. Yeah, it happened, blah, blah. And anyway, my dad got on to me a little bit. And that's a whole other story. We'll get into that later. But that tells you, on the flip side of wandering and being a 90s kid, going out and wandering around and doing stuff, like that's also what could happen. So we might be a little thankful that Aiden's in his room right now playing video games or whatever. But that's a true story. And anyway, I think my parents and those parents split the difference on the goal. And man, I was a jerk. I would have punched me in the face if I had. My parents should have beat me, but they didn't, thank God. But that's one of the times they probably had my number. They could have got away with it.
So to wrap this episode up, I'm sure we're getting close on time. So to wrap this episode up, let's get one thing, whether it be food or drink, from our. I know we kind of discussed a little bit, but just one food or drink that we could have back right now, and we were all sitting around eating or drinking it at this moment. What would it be from you, Brad?
Oh, it would still be the fried apple pie. It'd be the Mamaw fried apple pie. I mean, it's just one of those things that you can, like, I can sit here and talk about it.
Real quick, we got time.
Taste it.
Name let's say, okay, to me it's 2 categories. Okay. So that's a nostalgic grandmother.
Okay. Like a sentimental thing.
Give me a sentimental, and give me a snack or a drink or something discontinued, like we talked about, even if it's what you said earlier.
Oh, I would still go back to it has to be the combo. Yeah. The Surge.
Yes.
With the 3D Dorito.
Gotcha.
Because I felt like for me those things were like, delicious. They were my childhood. Like that's, I mean, outside of the Pringles or the Coca-Cola, it was the Surge and the 3D Doritos. Nice. Because they were special because we didn't get that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so like for us it was like, all right, we're going to buy the name brand stuff this week, guys, because, you know, we got tax return money or something like that, so we're going to get the name brand stuff. So we didn't get that stuff often, so when we did, it was like, you know, like the heavens opened up and the beam of light shined down on you, and you thought you were going to be the coolest kid in the neighborhood that day.
Sweet.
Sentimental for me, you talked about earlier before we turned this on that you were going to cry, but I'm going to get sentimental probably here in a second, but let me do the other one first because I'm gonna struggle. I do, like I said earlier, I do like those fruit twists. But something I miss dearly is they used to make a Crunch Bar actually in aluminum foil, and it would be wrapped in paper.
Yes.
That had 100% different taste than what we get now as a Crunch Bar. It was a perfect candy bar. Well, now you get it in plastic, and it has the plastic taste. It's not very good. So I miss that Crunch Bar, and I would take it back in a heartbeat. Sentimental, my Mamaw, anything she cooks. She is still alive, but she is unable to cook anymore. I would do anything to have, just mashed potatoes, pinto beans, cornbread, anything she makes. I would love to have right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm full, and I would go in there and eat a plate full of food of hers right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, mine would still be the pizzerias. Maybe the Jello pudding pops. Remember those?
I didn't know those weren't a thing
the pudding.
still.
Remember the Bill Cosby ones?
Yeah.
Delicious.
Bill Cosby before he was.
Yeah. Yeah,
Bill
we won't
Cosby.
get into that, but yeah. The pudding pops, Jello pudding pops, they were good.
Yeah.
We didn't have those very often, but it's one of those things you remember how they taste, even though you haven't had one forever.
I think that's another one of those things. I don't know if I've ever had one.
I can't believe they don't make them anymore.
Yeah, they don't make them. Haven't made them in like 30 years. I think it's one of those Mandela effects. It is.
I don't know. It's not been 30 years.
No, it's been a long time. Look it up. Yeah, so it would be the pizzeria. Maybe the pudding pops, just because it's been 30 years. He's over there looking it up. But obviously, Mamaw's cooking. It would be hard to pick one thing. So I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick mac and cheese and Heath candy bar cake.
Oh, man.
She always made for me. Some people call it moo moo cake. But that one's special. You know what I mean?
That sounds good. Which I like any kind of cake like that. I just can't do it now.
I remember like when she first started making it, and she made it. It was a consistent thing. If she knew I was going to be around, or there was a chance I was going to be there on Sunday, she would make that, or they would save a piece for me, or whatever. So that one's very. It's a very simple cake, but it she made it different.
Gotcha.
2004.
That
Jello pudding pops 21 years ago.
21 years.
That's
That's
close.
still a long time, man. 2004, to me, when people say that to us, it seems like it was yesterday.
Yeah,
But man,
that was the year after I graduated
Oh,
high
and
school.
bonus, the drink DNL.
Yeah.
DNL, bring it back. Let's go. It's pretty much Baja Blast, but DNL.
Well, I know we were wrapping this up, but you bring that up, and I'm thinking about I'm about to get blackberry juice all over my new couch here. But we were talking about not clearly Canadian, a crystal clear Pepsi.
Yeah.
Clearly Canadian
Clearly
used to
Canadian's
be a
fine
big
too.
thing, but
Yeah.
they you can actually still get
You
them
can
in
get those,
Kroger.
yeah.
But man, there was some good drinks back in the day. But anyway, that is this week's episode.
Hang on.
Brad's got one more thing.
Well, I mean, we call this, what's the dad jokes and deep vibe?
Deep dives, yeah.
So we got to end with a dad joke.
Well, I hope you got
Give
one
us
queued
one.
up, brother.
Have y'all been watching the news lately? There was a
try to stay
guy,
away. I try to stay away.
Well, there was a guy who was outside of the grocery store, and he was really mad at everybody, and he was throwing milk at people. How dare he?
Oh, jeez. There it is. And
That's
the
this
pod.
week, man. Y'all have a good one.